Hi guys, it's me Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing very well. Today I'm going to be doing a video that's a little bit out of my roundhouse. I'm going to be talking about how to study like a pro. Oh, what a wonderful time for the air to turn on. I personally have taken a long time to develop my own personal studying style, and I wish I had someone to aid me along the way and tell me what to do and what not to do, and I'm hoping to do that for you guys today. I think the one thing about studying is that it's so subjective, and that what works for someone may not work for you. I wanted to tell you guys these tips that I've acquired over my past I don't know how many years of doing school, so that I can help you out a little bit more, because as someone who does not love abiding by the traditional school system, I've developed a bit of studying techniques and life survival hacks that I wanted to share with you guys. We're gonna be dividing this up into like 3 parts-ish. I'm gonna go over studying, I'm gonna go over how to give a good presentation, and I'm gonna talk about homework as well, because I think those 3 really encompass academics and school. I'm rolling my eyes because I don't like the school system, but first we're going to start off with tests and exams. They definitely take up a large percentage of your grade, even though it doesn't really showcase a lot about you, but that's my personal opinion and we're going to take it out of this. My number 1 piece of advice, hack, study method I do is active recall. But essentially how active recall works, you're essentially going to map out everything that you've learned into a storyline. With active recall, you're going to recall anything that you remember, and get a whiteboard for this. A whiteboard, invest in a whiteboard, go to your library, go to some public space that has a whiteboard. I think the number 1 thing that has benefited me with studying is a whiteboard. I cannot tell you how much it has helped me. It has helped me immensely. It's not the same as typing. It's not the same as writing on your iPad. Getting a physical marker and writing it on the whiteboard does a hell of a lot of a difference. Write down everything that you remember. And once you're done with everything that you remember, you're gonna go back and review your notes and fill in anything that you missed. I usually like to fill in anything that I've missed with a separate color, because it kind of attracts your eye more, and it's kind of like a hey, I need help in this area. And that's really important, is to have 2 different colors in a whiteboard or whatever writing method you want to use. People who type and study while typing, it does not cut it. Typing will not cut anything. Reading will not cut it. Typing and reading are so inefficient. The only way I think your mind truly grasps information is when you you understand it, you write it down, and you have memory of what happened. You know, it's quite simple when you think about it. I think the number 1 issue is typically just procrastination and getting yourself to do it. Another method that's kind of adjacent to this is telling what you learned to a family member or a friend or whoever. By pretending you're a teacher, you're forced to explain concepts, and I think you don't get that with traditional studying, because you just have it up here and you're just assuming, I know this, I know that, I know this. But when you play the role of the teacher, you have to explain, and you have to understand why things work out and why this plus this equals that, you know? That's another method. Obviously, you need to have someone who's willing to listen to you. I'm really glad, because my dad listened to me all throughout AP Calc, and I did fairly well on that test, so if that goes to show anything, there it is. My next tip with tests is to study ahead of time. I cannot emphasize this enough. I used to be the girl that would study, 3 days before a test, and then I got into high school, and no, that won't slide. And especially if you've been flying through high school like that, in college, it's gonna change, babe. It's gonna change. You have to study at least like 5 days ahead of time. I like to say a week. I know that's not feasible for everyone, but if you do a little bit of review at a time, your brain has more room to just acquire those pieces of information rather than blasting it with all the information at once. It's a lot less overwhelming. So if you're someone like me who does not thrive under pressure and needs those days, study ahead of time. And when it comes to that, get Google Calendar. Get a calendar, get a physical calendar, get a digital calendar. It matters. When you map out all of your work in front of you, you see when the deadlines are, you know when to start studying. Like, I know not everyone abides by the agenda system. I used to be that too. I would keep it up all in my head, and eventually I just miss assignments. I drop my grade because of something that I missed. And eventually I found a system that worked for me, and that was Google Calendar. And not everyone uses Google Calendar. Like, you could use your journal, you could use your agenda, you could use a piece of paper. But as long as you have a map and a roadmap of what you're going to do, it sets yourself up for success, because you have more of an idea of how much time you need to study. Along with this is just paying attention in class. And I know this is a hard one, and I know it's like, I don't know what to do. And I think learning how to take notes is very interesting and very subjective, and also everyone does it differently. But one of the things I actively do in class, I look at my teacher and I pay attention. Like it sounds so simple, but it is so hard to do, especially when we're in a world where, you know, TikToks are 5 seconds and you need some form of like digital stimulation every, you know, minute. But listen to your teacher. Don't be that person who looks at the presentation and then types exactly what's down on the presentation. That's not gonna do you any good. Listen to the words that your teacher is saying. I find that when your teacher speaks about the concept that's put on the board, it's more of a simplified version. You can understand it easier and you get a better grasp of what's going on. I think especially in like my philosophy class, I do this very, very, very actively. Also my like communications and media classes, the words that come out of your teacher's mouth are honestly like what they like to hear and what they like to put on a test. So by listening to what they actively, you know, confirmation bias to, then you have a better understanding of how to proceed through an exam or a test. So listen to the words that your teachers are saying and don't be that person who's word for word copying down what's on the board. Write down concepts, write down all that stuff, but the words that come out of your teacher's mouth are so important. With multiple choice tests, process of elimination, I think we all know this, but it's super important. When I see two concepts that are too eerily similar and the same, then I'm like, I'm not sure if that could be an answer choice, because you know, you can't have two answers that are the same unless if it's like an all of the above type situation. So I think really using common sense and logic when it comes to multiple choice is so important. Another hack is to pace yourself with the test. Don't stay stuck on a question. I think this is so important because I used to do this and my time management was you know, sometimes it still happens to me, depends on how prepared I am. But if you're stuck on a question, skip it. You'll be fine. And then at the end, once you've done all your questions, go back to that question. Because sometimes the good thing about multiple choice exams is the fact that there's a lot more information ahead of that question. So sometimes other questions can help you solve that question. Okay, and now we're gonna move on into presentations, because as a communications person, I do not see enough people talk about how to study for communications, how to do well in communication. And I want to be that person to just give my advice, because I think, you know, people don't talk about it enough. We are always talking about essays and multiple choice and blah, 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 blah. Is that going to help you in the real world? No. You got to learn how to give a presentation. No matter what field you're in, you've got to learn how to give a presentation. So the first one is nerves. I know we all have it. I know everyone experiences it to some degree, but my number one piece of advice, no caffeine before a presentation. Don't psych yourself out, especially for my anxious girlies. I'm an anxious girly, so I understand you. No caffeine, no coffee before the presentation. You gotta be as mellowed out as possible. Take an ashwagandha, I don't know. And the second thing on kind of how to overcome public speaking, I think you just gotta know that by you giving a presentation, people are only gonna benefit from what you're saying. And no one is judging you. And I know that's like a load of bullshit to say and be like, no one's judging you. Maybe one person's judging you. Like, does that person mean anything to you? No. What means stuff to you is your project, your presentation, everything. When it comes to delivering a good presentation, if you're passionate about your subject, if you did your work, if you revised, if you practiced, all plays into how well you give a presentation. And if you're so focused on what other people are thinking about you, that means you have not focused enough on your topic. And I think that's really important. You should be passionate and you should be proud of your work. And I think another thing, this is like bottom tier advice, but 99% of people who listen to presentations, I swear to God, don't even listen. When I'm giving presentations, people are often looking at their computers or they're on their phone or anything like that, or they're, you know, looking at the sky or at the ceiling. It's because we have a small attention span. So if that really helps, it helps, but it's not gonna help in the long run. I think it helps within like college and high school because we're on our phones constantly, but that's another piece of advice. My next piece of advice is to practice, 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 practice. I cannot emphasize this enough. As someone who does not give a presentation with a note card or my phone, practicing is so important. Take 2 days before your presentation and start running through your parts. Start running through your parts, because I think the most unattractive thing when it comes to a presentation is someone who reads word for word off the slides. I can read myself. You don't need to read for me. I think I still see this in university. I still see this in college. Students who read off the board, and I think it's so like, be so for real. I can read myself. How about you explain it to me? I think it's important to learn how to reword what you're putting on your presentation, and also, you know, drag it out a little. Talk a little bit more about what this point is. I think a presentation looks 10 times better when there's only 3 concepts on the slide rather than a whole paragraph. That's overwhelming and no one wants to deal with that. So practice. The more you practice, the more you get a hang of how to give a presentation, and also you're less nervous because you have the feeling of standing up and giving a presentation with your computer next to you. It just makes sense. The same way you would approach a test, approach a presentation like that. Also, make sure to get certain buzzwords down or certain transitions down. It's very important to practice. You can do this through talking to your friend, talking to a wall. You can record yourself with a video to see how you look and how you present. I think all of that is very important. Another thing is body language. I didn't really think about this until recently, but I've been reading a lot about body language in my nonfiction books, and body language is so important as to how you present yourself in a presentation because it gives off a certain aura. So I think the number one most important thing is do not do this, do not do that, don't. Because when you do this, you're closing your energy off to people and it's giving the vibe of, I don't want to be here. You can think that in your mind, but don't let your body do it. Don't cross your arms, don't fidget with your leg, don't bounce your leg, don't do any of that. It's very, very unprofessional in my opinion, and you just look worse. So if that means putting your hands to the side, putting your hands on your waist, or just just being casual and calm, body language is so important. Don't put your fingers in your pockets. That's another sign of being shy, another sign of being uncomfortable. Speak with your palms. Body language is so important. Being able to speak with your hands is a lot more persuasive than just standing there like this and talking like this. When you talk with your hands, it gives more of an aura that you don't normally see with a regular presentation. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and also along those lines, try to speak with your palms out. I learned this recently, but speaking with your palms out, it's more of a welcoming gesture, so people feel more comfortable almost. Yeah, those are my tips on body language. It's very hard to control because your body does naturally what it wants to do, but I think there's some things that you should consciously be aware of when giving a presentation. I think with presentations, it's all about practice and it's all about knowing your material, and that's what makes a good presenter. And you don't have to be an extroverted person to be a good presenter. You just need to know your material. And I know it sounds simple, but I think if I were to stress one point the most, do not read word for word off your slides. Don't do that. Some people will take off points for that at some point in your life, and the most boring presenters are the ones that read off the screen. Sorry, I mean, I still have teachers and I still have professors who do the same things, and I think they're the most ineffective people on the planet when it comes to teaching because I can read myself. How about you explain it to me? I think you'll see and notice that the best presenters and the best professors are people who don't read directly off the board. It's not gonna work. All right, and our last topic we're gonna get into is homework, because homework is a big part of your grade and also how you perform on a test. So we're going to talk about how to approach homework in the most effective manner. So going back to what I said earlier, having an agenda is so important. Having a list, a visualization of what you need to do is so important. And I think this is one of my non-negotiables when it comes to planning out your school year. I need a visualization. So what I do personally is I get a syllabus at the beginning of every semester, and I take time, I sit down and I write down every single assignment I have to do, and I put it in an Excel sheet, and then I sort the Excel sheet by date and label classes by color. That might sound like a lot, but it's very beneficial. And I bold all my test dates. I did not do this last year, and my grades have been 10 times better this year because I can schedule out everything. It'll happen when a test will sneak up on you and you're like, I only have 2 days. That'll happen. But when it comes to having an Excel sheet, it doesn't happen because you know when it's gonna happen. You see the bold and you're like, okay, it's on this date and I'm gonna take a week before to study. It's important to have a layout of what your big tests are and what your big homeworks are, because yes, in college, tests, projects, and assignments will sneak up on you and you'll be so confused and so bamboozled and I didn't know this was supposed to happen. Yeah, it was gonna happen. So I highly recommend an Excel sheet or any form of scheduling that lays out your homeworks and projects and tests in the long run. Another thing when it comes to homework is to get it done as soon as possible. In school, I would go home and I'd lay down, and then I wouldn't get my homework done until later. Do you listen to that? Does it sound ineffective? Because it is ineffective. When it comes to getting your homework done as soon as possible, especially when the material is fresh in your brain, it's important to exercise that immediately so your brain can get a handle as to what you're working on. So yeah, getting homework done ASAP. It is mostly procrastination and getting yourself to do something, but you have to do something even if you don't want to do it. And I know it sounds so stupid, but you have to get up and you have to do your work and force yourself, because in your mind things sound worse than they are. Like doing your homework immediately when you get back from school it's not a big deal. So yeah, just learning how to discipline yourself, which I can do a whole other video on discipline. And I think that's pretty much it for all my tips. I feel like I'm missing some, so maybe I'll come back with a revised version sometime in the future. But those were my hacks on tests, presentations, and homework. I hope you enjoyed. I hope everything helped you out. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments below, because I know I could elaborate on something. So yeah, that was it for this week's video, and I will see you next time. Bye!